I'd seen her plenty of times before, mostly through the hallway window when she watered her potted basil, sometimes at the row of mailboxes downstairs. We'd nod, maybe exchange a small hi. Nothing more. Tonight, though, she knocked on my door. It was just past 7. My kitchen smelled faintly of reheated curry. I had headphones on but no music playing, an old habit. The knock startled me because almost nobody visits. I pulled the earbuds out and opened the door. She stood there in a gray cardigan, hair pulled back loosely, holding nothing at all in her hands. No cup, no dish, no note. Just a small breath visible in the cool air of the hallway. "Hi," she said, like she wasn't sure if it was a real word. "Sorry, am I bothering you?" No, not at all." My voice cracked a little. I stepped back, then realized I hadn't invited her in. "Do you want to come in?" She smiled in that polite neighbor way, but her eyes drifted past my shoulder to the stack of unopened mail on my counter. "Just for a minute, maybe." I moved a pile of books off the chair nearest the door. "It's a mess," I muttered. "It looks lived in," she said softly. She set her palms on the back of the chair, but didn't sit. Her hands were still damp from watering plants, little droplets catching the kitchen light. I filled the silence with motion, pushing my mug closer to the sink, folding the napkin I'd left unfolded, sliding my phone screen down across the counter. "So, what's up?" She tilted her head. "I know this is strange. I was making tea and realized I never returned your thermos from last month. The one you lent me in the lobby." "Oh," I said, like I'd forgotten. I had actually. No rush. She looked at me for a beat longer than polite. "You're always home around this time." "Yeah." I almost joked about my thrilling social life, but bit it back. Instead, I said, "Work runs late, and then I'm here." She finally sat, smoothing her cardigan sleeves as if brushing away invisible lint. "I remember my 20s being like that. You think you're busy now, and later you realize you were just lonely." She laughed once, quietly, then looked down. I didn't know what to answer. My eyes flicked toward her hands again. Narrow fingers, a silver ring, but not on the ring finger. She noticed me noticing and tucked her hands under the table. We talked about nothing for a while. The noise from the upstairs unit, the weather that refused to cool down. Our words stumbled and doubled back. She remembered my coffee order from the cafe down the block. I'd only seen her there twice. "You take it black, no sugar," she said, and smiled like it wasn't a big deal. At some point she stood. "I should go, right?" "Sure." I followed her to the door, but neither of us reached for the knob right away. She glanced at my phone on the counter, then back at me. "Do you ever need a break from eating alone?" she asked lightly. I tried to smile. "Sometimes." She nodded once and stepped into the hallway. "Well, good night." When I closed the door, the apartment felt heavier, like it had absorbed something unsaid. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from an unknown number. "You don't have to answer, but dinner's on me next time." I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering, not pressing send that I didn't answer her text that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. I typed "sure" 3 times and erased it. I even wrote, "I'm busy," and erased that too. In the end, I left it blank and watched the screen go dark. 2 evenings later, a knock again. Softer this time. She stood at my door holding a small tin of tea leaves. "I brought what I meant to give you," she said. "For the thermos." I let her in without thinking. The apartment looked exactly the same. Half-washed mug, laptop open, mail pile taller. She set the tin down and glanced at the books stacked on the radiator. "History?" she asked. "Mostly. I'm trying to finish my teaching certification." "That's what you're doing at odd hours." She smiled faintly. "I was a school nurse for 15 years. It's a strange world. Kids don't realize how much you see." We sat at the small kitchen table. I boiled water, hands clumsy around the kettle. She took off her cardigan, draping it on the back of the chair like she belonged there. "Your daughter goes to college, right?" I asked. I wasn't sure where the question came from. Maybe the silver ring I'd seen. "2nd year," she said, eyes softening. "I still forget," and set 2 plates. She laughed quietly and pressed a thumb into the tin of tea, like she was grounding herself. "Divorced, before you wonder. 6 years now." The kettle clicked off. I poured the water, and the smell of the tea rose up, sharp and floral. We both leaned in at the same time and then leaned back, almost bumping heads. She smiled, but didn't comment. That's a big gap, I said before I could stop myself. Your daughter and me are almost the same age. Her eyebrows lifted, but not in surprise. You noticed? I felt heat creep up my neck. I shouldn't have said that. She looked at me, then down at her mug. No, it's the kind of thing you should say if you're thinking it. Otherwise, it sits between people and makes everything heavier. She blew on the tea, eyes lowered. Still, it's complicated. We drank in silence. The only sound was the small pop of the radiator. She traced the rim of her mug with her finger, a slow circle. My phone buzzed once on the counter, and we both pretended not to hear. She said, almost to herself, when I first moved here, I used to knock on neighbors' doors with excuses. Borrow sugar, ask for stamps. Really, I just wanted to know who was out there. I get that, I said quietly. I draft texts to people all the time and never send them. I gave a short laugh. Sometimes I wonder if the unsent ones say more about me than the sent ones. She tilted her head, looking at me differently. That's honest. I shrugged. Or pathetic. Not pathetic, she said. Her voice had gone softer, the way people talk when they're not sure if they're allowed. Just human. We drifted into small talk about work again, but the air felt thicker now, not with drama, but with something unnamed. She reached for her mug, our hands almost touching on the tabletop. I pulled mine back to fold the napkin into a smaller square. She noticed, but didn't pull away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I thought, staring at the crease in the napkin. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. She stood after a while. I should go. Papers to grade, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. At the door she paused. Your lock sticks, she said, turning the knob gently. Then she reached up without warning and smoothed the collar of my shirt with her fingertips. Quick, light, like brushing off dust. There, she said. Better. She stepped into the hallway before I could answer. The smell of the tea still hung in the kitchen. I touched the spot on my collar where her fingers had been, then let my hand drop. The next week fell off. She didn't knock. I didn't text. Just quick nods in the lobby, both of us already looking away. My evenings grew louder with small noises. The fridge hum, a neighbor's TV, my own pulse in my ears. Friday evening I saw her through the stairwell window, arms full of grocery bags. She hesitated at my floor, then kept walking. A second later she turned back and knocked anyway, lighter than before. I bought too much tea again, she said, holding up a box like a peace offering. Inside, we fell into a routine, water boiling, mugs waiting. She sat at the table but angled her body toward the door, as if already leaving. You're quiet tonight, she said. So are you, I replied. My hands circled the mug though it was still empty. She smiled, but not really. Long day. I wanted to ask long how, long why, but I didn't. Instead, I pushed the sugar toward her even though she never used any. She looked at it, then at me. You're different, she said softly. Since last time. I gave a half shrug. Am I? Her eyes flicked to my phone on the counter. Maybe I shouldn't come by so much. People notice things. My stomach tightened. Who? Doesn't matter. She gave a small laugh. I'm old enough to know better. She stood as if to go, but didn't move. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water slowly, steam rising between us like a curtain. Stay for tea, I said too quickly. She hesitated, then sat again, hands folded tight on her lap. We sipped in silence. Her fingers tapped the mug once, twice, then stopped. I found myself mirroring the rhythm on my knee. She said quietly, when I was your age, I rented a basement apartment. There was an older neighbor who'd bring me soup when I worked late. Married. Nothing happened. But I always wondered if he knew how much it meant to me. I swallowed. And now? Now I'm the neighbor, she said with a small, sad smile. She looked up. I don't know what I'm doing. I reached out before thinking, brushing my fingers against hers on the mug. She didn't pull back. For a second we both stayed there, two hands, warm ceramic, steam curling. A knock at the door. Sharp. We jumped apart. Package delivery. A voice called from the hall. I opened it just enough to take the box. By the time I shut the door she was standing, bag in hand. She began. Yeah, I said. We stood close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of gray in her hair. She glanced at my mouth, then away, biting her lip. My hand hovered near her arm, but didn't land. "Good night," she whispered, already stepping back. The door closed between us. I pressed my forehead to it. Eyes shut, the taste of unsaid words at the back of my throat. Saturday came with a soft drizzle. The kind that darkens concrete, but never quite turns into rain. I found her outside the building, sitting on the low stone wall where the delivery bikes park. No umbrella, just a paper bag on her lap, damp at the corners. She looked up when I stepped out. "Going somewhere." "Just needed air," I said. I almost turned back, then sat down a little apart from her. My jacket brushed against her sleeve, a tiny static crackle between us. "You don't usually come out at this hour," she said. "You don't usually sit here," I answered. She smiled faintly, but her eyes were tired. "I had a fight with my daughter on the phone. Nothing dramatic. Just distance." She tightened the knot of the bag's handles, knuckles pale. I watched cars slide past on the wet street. "Sorry." She shook her head. "Not your fault." We sat in silence. The drizzle made a soft hiss on the pavement. She opened the bag, took out 2 paper cups of coffee. "I didn't know if you'd be around." I took one, holding it between my palms. "Thanks." She stared at the street. "Do you ever feel like you're living on borrowed time?" she asked quietly. "Like the things you shouldn't have are the ones you keep reaching for?" I didn't answer. I watched a droplet slide down her hairline, stopping at her jaw. She wiped it away absently. "I saw you with someone yesterday," she said after a moment. "At the cafe." "Oh, that was just a classmate." I figured. She laughed once, brittle. "I shouldn't even ask. You're allowed to have a life." "It's not like that," I said quickly. She turned to look at me, eyes sharp now. "Then what is it like?" My throat felt dry. "I don't know." She held my gaze for a long second, then looked away, pulling her cardigan tighter. "I keep telling myself this is harmless. Neighborly. Tea and small talk." Her voice cracked slightly. "But it's not, is it?" I stared at my cup. The cardboard felt hot against my fingers. "I think about you," I said, almost a whisper. "More than I should." Her breath caught. She set her cup down on the wall carefully, like it might spill. "Don't." "I'm not saying," I began. "I know what you're saying." She pressed her palms to her knees. "And I don't know if I want you to stop." The drizzle picked up. People hurried by under umbrellas, a blur of color. We stayed still. She took a long breath. "When I first saw you in the lobby, you reminded me of someone I used to know. He was kind. He noticed things. He left." Her voice softened. "You look at me like I'm still visible." I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. "You are," I said. Her shoulders trembled once, then stilled. "This isn't fair to you," she murmured. "Or to me." "I'm not sure what fair looks like," I said. We sat there, our cups cooling, drizzle turning our hair damp. A car splashed through a puddle, sending a mist over our shoes. Neither of us moved. "I keep thinking," she said slowly. "If I lean an inch closer, everything changes. I don't know if I'm brave enough for that." I swallowed. "I don't know if I am either." She turned to me fully now, rain beating on her eyelashes. For a heartbeat her hand lifted, as if to touch my face, then stopped in midair. She let it fall back to her lap. "I can't do this," she whispered. Then, quieter, "But maybe I already am." We stared at each other, inches apart. The hiss of drizzle, the faint smell of coffee, the weight of all the unsent texts between us. My hand moved slightly toward hers, but stopped. Her lips parted as if to speak. She didn't. I didn't. The question hung there, unspoken. If we crossed this line, the drizzle stopped the next day, but she didn't show up. Not in the hall, not in the stairwell, not at my door. For 2 evenings I lingered by my window, mug in hand, watching for her basil pots to move. Nothing. The green leaves drooped without water. By Thursday, I told myself I wouldn't wait. I graded papers at the kitchen table, headphones in with no music. The screen glowed. My phone lay face down beside me, the silence louder than any ringtone. On Friday, a plain envelope appeared under my door. No name. Inside, a small note in neat handwriting. "Out of town for a while. Take care." Nothing else. No explanation. I read it twice, then set it under the sugar tin. Saturday, out of habit, I walked to the cafe. She wasn't there. I took my coffee to the corner table anyway, staring at the chair opposite. People came and went, umbrellas dripping. I tried to read, but the words slid past me. That's when I overheard two women at the counter, colleagues of hers from the school, I think. She's taking leave, one said. Family stuff. Her daughter. The other nodded. I thought it was the ex again. I left the cafe before my cup was empty. That night, I drafted a message. Everything okay? Deleted it. Wrote, do you need anything? Deleted that too. The blue cursor blinked, waiting. I locked my phone and set it face down again. Days blurred. I saw my reflection in the dark window more than the street outside. Work felt heavier. Even my students noticed. You look tired, one said. I smiled and changed the subject. Then, a week later, she appeared in the lobby. Hair pulled back tighter than usual, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She was holding a grocery bag, but kept glancing toward the elevator like she wanted to disappear into it. You're back, I said before I could stop myself. She looked up, startled. Just for a few days, she said. I have to, there's a lot. She gestured vaguely with the bag. My daughter's moving in with her father for a while. It's complicated. I didn't know what to say. Do you want help carrying? No, too quick. Then softer. Thank you. We stood there, elevator doors closed, lobby empty. She shifted the bag to her other hand. I shouldn't have, she stopped. Never mind. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she pressed the elevator button again, staring at the glowing numbers. You look different, she said, almost a whisper. I'm the same, I said. She smiled without looking. No, you're learning to be. The doors slid open. She stepped inside without turning. The bag swung at her side like a pendulum. I almost followed, but the gap between us felt heavier than the floor. The doors closed on their own, slow and final. The lobby lights hummed. Back upstairs, I opened my phone. Drafted, I miss RT. Deleted. Drafted, I'm here if you want to talk. Deleted. The screen dimmed. I sat at the kitchen table, the thermos still on the counter, her handwriting under the sugar tin. The basil outside her window looked brittle now. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. I closed the phone, slid it into a drawer, and left it there. The drizzle stopped the next day, but she didn't show up. Not in the hall, not in the stairwell, not at my door. For 2 evenings I lingered by my window, mug in hand, watching for her basil pots to move. Nothing. The green leaves drooped without water. By Thursday, I told myself I wouldn't wait. I grated papers at the kitchen table, headphones in with no music. The screen glowed. My phone lay face down beside me, the silence louder than any ringtone. On Friday, a plain envelope appeared under my door. No name. Inside, a small note in neat handwriting. Out of town for a while. Take care. Nothing else. No explanation. I read it twice, then set it under the sugar tin. Saturday, out of habit, I walked to the cafe. She wasn't there. I took my coffee to the corner table anyway, staring at the chair opposite. People came and went, umbrellas dripping. I tried to read, but the words slid past me. That's when I overheard two women at the counter, colleagues of hers from the school, I think. She's taking leave, one said. Family stuff. Her daughter. The other nodded. I thought it was the ex again. I left the cafe before my cup was empty. That night, I drafted a message. Everything okay? Deleted it. Wrote, do you need anything? Deleted that too. The blue cursor blinked, waiting. I locked my phone and set it face down again. Days blurred. I saw my reflection in the dark window more than the street outside. Work felt heavier. Even my students noticed. You look tired, one said. I smiled and changed the subject. Then, a week later, she appeared in the lobby. Hair pulled back tighter than usual, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She was holding a grocery bag, but kept glancing toward the elevator like she wanted to disappear into it. You're back, I said before I could stop myself. She looked up, startled. Just for a few days, she said. I have to, there's a lot. She gestured vaguely with the bag. My daughter's moving in with her father for a while. It's complicated. I didn't know what to say. Do you want help carrying? No, too quick. Then softer. Thank you. We stood there, elevator doors closed, lobby empty. She shifted the bag to her other hand. I shouldn't have, she stopped. Never mind. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she pressed the elevator button again, staring at the glowing numbers. You look different, she said, almost a whisper. I'm the same, I said. She smiled without looking. No, you're learning to be. The door slid open. She stepped inside without turning. The bag swung at her side like a pendulum. I almost followed, but the gap between us felt heavier than the floor. The doors closed on their own, slow and final. The lobby lights hummed. Back upstairs, I opened my phone. Drafted, I miss RT. Deleted. Drafted, I'm here if you want to talk. Deleted. The screen dimmed. I sat at the kitchen table, the thermos still on the counter, her handwriting under the sugar tin. The basil outside her window looked brittle now. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I closed the phone, slid it into a drawer, and left it there. It's been 6 months since that night in my kitchen. The thermos still lives on the counter, but now it's usually full. We've found a rhythm, not a dramatic one, just small, steady habits. She still lives across the hall, but she doesn't knock at random anymore. We text in the morning about groceries, about whether the basil needs water. Most Thursdays we walk together to the cafe at 8:47 a.m., her on her way to school, me before my first class. She orders tea. I take my coffee black, no sugar. We sit by the window in the same 2 chairs. Nobody stares. It looks ordinary from the outside. Sometimes we still sit on the stone wall outside our building after work, like we did that rainy day. No drizzle this time. Just the smell of warm pavement and cut grass. She'll tell me about a student who fainted in the nurse's office. I'll tell her about the first time a class listened to my lecture without glancing at their phones. We laugh quietly. It's not about hiding anymore. It's just our way. Her daughter comes by sometimes. She's polite, curious, a little wary. We don't explain much. We don't have to. We've let the story grow at its own pace, without a single "what are we" conversation. It's not a secret. It's just ours. On Saturdays we cook in my apartment. Rice, curry, tea. She leans against the counter, sleeves pushed up, while I chop vegetables. She still tucks her hands under the table when she's nervous. I still fold napkins without thinking. We still pause sometimes, glancing at each other like we're remembering the first few knocks on the door. There was no big confession, no kiss under streetlights. Just a slow settling. Her daughter moved back with her father, but visits on weekends. I've started running evening classes at the school. Our lives overlap in small, practical ways. Yet the air feels different now. Less like waiting, more like living. Last week, on a bench outside the cafe, she handed me a paper cup without looking. Tea, she said. Extra hot. Don't burn yourself. Her hand brushed mine for a second longer than necessary. We both smiled. The same bench where she once told me she didn't know what she was doing. The same time on the clock above the counter. 8:47. I like this, I said. She didn't answer right away. Then, me too. Simple. True. Sometimes I think about that first night. Me with my reheated curry, her with nothing in her hands. I didn't feel heartbroken then. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Now, sitting across from her with steam curling from our cups, it feels like we've been quietly writing the rest together. I glance at her over my coffee. She's stirring her tea absent-mindedly, a habit she never had before. She catches me looking and tilts her head, a silent question only we understand. My thumb runs once over the lid of my cup, like an answer. There's no need to say more. The warmth between us is visible in the small spaces. The thermos on the counter, the basil that never droops anymore, the shared walk at 8:47 a.m. We built something real in the pauses. She smiles at me now, tired but at ease. Okay, she asks softly. I smile back. Okay. The clock above the cafe door ticks forward. Outside, the street wakes up. Inside, it's just 2 people drinking tea and black coffee at a window table, like it's the most normal thing in the world. That oh, do we become?